want to carry him a microphone? If he'd stand behind the pulpit tonight, if it was, I don't know. I think it's going. I think it may be.
Miss Sadie's home. She's doing great. She's not even, Paula said she doesn't have to have anyone staying with her right now, so she's doing really good. DeLeslie got a good report, so thank you guys for praying there. Also, Nelson's got to do some therapy the next couple of weeks, so make sure to keep him in your prayers. Is there anybody else? Anyone else? Wow, okay. All right, well, you ready? It's going to be a tough crowd tonight. Let's go ahead. All right. I'm unmuted. We're going to start back our Thursday night Bible study in March. We'll go for a few weeks, then we'll stop. I'm not in a hurry with that Bible study. I'm not on a timetable, so we'll go a few weeks, take off a few weeks, go a few weeks. But we will eventually get through the entire Bible. I believe we stopped in Psalms. Is it Psalms? I can't remember. We'll figure it out. But Joshua chapter 7. This is a story of, has anybody read through this before I get started? Does anybody even know this story? Okay, good. Thank goodness. All right. This is a story of law. It's a story of sanctification. It's a story of going against the will of God. And it is a story of redemption in chapter 8. And it is a story of, first and foremost, sin. Something that everybody deals with, everybody struggles with. Why did Jesus Christ come to this earth? What was the one reason he came to this earth? To save people. Why did we need saving? We had a sin problem. We were sinners. That was the reason he came. It says, I come to seek and to save those who are lost. Why are people lost? Because they're sinners. That's why he came. And you're going to find out in chapter 7, the reason that Israel got into the trouble that they gotten into was because of sin. And what is amazing to me, it is not the sin of an entire group. It is a sin of one individual, but that sin spread. So let's pick up with verses 20. This is how this works. God tells Joshua, here's what I want you to do. God knew who the sinner was, all right? God knew who was hiding the stuff that he had taken. And what had happened, if you don't know the story, there is a city by the name of Ai. And Joshua and the children of Israel, or the army of Israel, are going to go up against this tiny little village called Ai. They had just conquered Jericho. And you know the story about marching around the walls of Jericho, the walls come tumbling down. And then when you get to chapter 7, the very first word in chapter 7, verse 1 is but. Okay? Now, the children of Israel are going to take an army of about 3,000 men up into Ai to try to defeat them. But what the children of Israel do not know is there is a man by the name of Achan who had went in and had taken some plunder, so to speak, from Jericho. And God told the children of Israel, or told Joshua, when you destroy Jericho, destroy everything. If it's got the breath of life in it, destroy it. But you can take the gold, the silver, and things like that, precious stones. And the reason they are going to take them is they are going to use them in the tabernacle that they are going to build. So they go in, they destroy Jericho in chapter 6. But this one individual takes some stuff that he shouldn't have taken. So now it's the next day, next couple of days, and they're going to go up and try to defeat this town called Ai. And instead of taking a large number of individuals, and instead of praying to God, and you'll notice before they take the town of Ai, or the community or the crossroads of Ai, if you look back with Jericho, there is a lot of prayer. You're going to have about 2 to 3 chapters of instructions before they go into Jericho. It's a lot of instructions before they go into Jericho, and a lot of praying, and a lot of meditating, and a lot of getting close to God. When they go into Ai, there's no praying, there's no nothing. That it is, let us get a few thousand men, we'll go in there and we'll take care of them. So when you get into this, in about chapter 5, they go into Ai, and Ai runs them out of town. Just this little town called Ai. And 36 individuals from the nation of Israel, or the Israeli army, die. So they go back, and everybody's crying, and you find out in verse 11 that Israel has transgressed against God. So now in verses 13, God is going to give more instruction to Joshua for the children of Israel. This is the instruction: sanctify thy people and sanctify yourselves. And here's what's going to happen. You got how many tribes of Israel? 12 tribes of Israel, okay? Here's what he says. I want you to bring all the tribes before me. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the tribe that is responsible, or the person that's responsible from that tribe, and I'm going to separate that tribe. The rest of the 11, you guys are free to go. Then I'm going to take that tribe, and then I'm going to separate that tribe by families. So what happens is this tribe, and I believe it's Judah, this tribe comes out, Judah, and they are separated. So now you got this one tribe. So the rest of the 11 are going, okay, whoever is guilty is in that tribe. So what happens next is God separates, and that is what the word sanctify means. The word sanctification or sanctify means is to separate oneself. When we are saved, we are sanctified. God sanctifies us. Now, with sanctification as a Christian, it is something that does not take place instantly. Sanctification is a process that takes place each and every day. You are never fully sanctified, ever. You are completely sanctified when either the rapture comes and you go to heaven, or you die and you go to heaven. One of those two. So each and every day, God is sanctifying us. He is separating us. So what happens is you have this family from the tribe of Judah, so everybody knows, okay, now there's a certain family that is going to be guilty. So he takes the tribe, takes the family, and now he is going to take an individual from that family and declare that person guilty. And it's kind of like when we're standing for the people that are lost, that when you get through the great white throne judgment, you're going to be standing one-on-one with God, and he's going to judge you based on, with Christianity. Let me back up. With the Bema judgment, or the judgment seat of Christ, as Christians, it's going to be us and God, and we are going to be judged based on our works, not on our Christianity, because we are there because we're saved. But if you're a lost individual, you're going to be standing before God alone with God, and he is going to sentence you. So just like with this, with Achan, he is going to be standing alone with God, he and his family, okay? So now you get to verse 19. So everything has been laid out. They know who the guilty party is, and here's where the story picks up. Joshua, around 80 years old at this time, this is what he says. Joshua said unto Achan, My son, give, I pray thee, glory to the Lord God of Israel, and make confession unto him. And tell me now what thou hast done, hide it not from me. So what Joshua is saying, now the key word in this is confession, right? It tells us if we confess our sins, God is what? Faithful and just to forgive us. But with this, you're dealing with law. You're not dealing with grace. All right? And you're dealing with something that us as Gentiles have no part of. And this is it. The children of Israel are going into the promised land to capture it. Guess what has been on the news since October the 7th, two or 3 years ago? Who has been on the news almost each and every day fighting? Israel. You know what they're fighting over? A piece of land that's smaller than Crossville. Because the nation of Israel belongs to the Jews. End of story. You find that out in the book of Genesis. You find it in the book of Exodus. You find it in the book of Joshua. Okay? Now, that is the key word. Make confession. Give glory to God of Israel. Make confession. Tell me what you have hid from him. And Achan said, Achan is going to make a confession. Here's the confession. Now, if you look at this, he is going to utter some words that have been uttered only a few times in the Old Testament. Okay? You find out that King Saul is going to utter the same words. You're going to find out that King David is going to utter these same words. And then you're going to find out that Achan is going to utter these same words. All right? And here are the words. I have sinned against the Lord God of Israel. I have sinned. So what is Achan doing right now? He's confessing sin. Would it not be nice if at the next verse it says, and God forgave Achan, and they all lived happily ever after, and Israel went into Ai, and they destroyed them, and it was great. It'd be nice, wouldn't it? But what has to be dealt with is sin. Okay? he says, I have sinned against the Lord God of Israel, and thus have I done. That thus and thus is Joshua sparing Achan embarrassment. He's given him the Reader's Digest version of what he has done. Achan is alone with Joshua and God. Achan is making confession to Joshua and also to God. He is doing exactly what he is supposed to do because he says, make a confession. And this is what he says he's done. He says, when I saw the spoils. Now, if you go back to the book of Genesis, what is the very first thing that happened with Eve when she goes into that garden and she sees that tree of knowledge of good and evil? She sees it first, right? She does it, she sees it. What is the first thing he says when I saw the Babylonian garment? What is the first thing? I saw it. It's always about seeing, all right? And I saw among the spoils of the goodly Babylonian garment, and I took 200 shekels of silver and a wedge of gold of 50 shekels of weight. And then I, what? Coveted them. What is one of the 10 commandments? Thou shalt not what? Covet. And you'll notice that he's breaking commandment after commandment after commandment. And I took them, and behold, they are hid in the earth in the midst of my tent, and the silver is under it. And we've talked about this before. When you start looking at weights and measurements in Old Testament, it's not an exact science, really. But I'm just going to go ahead and tell you this is a lot of stuff. A lot of it. It's not a piggy bank's worth. It is a ton of stuff that he has to hide under his tent. So he's got all of this. He says, I've hid every bit of this under my tent. He said, I saw it, and I coveted it, and I took it, and I hid it under my tent. So Joshua sends messengers. They ran unto the tent, and behold, it was hid in the tent and silver under it. You know, I'm guilty. Everybody is guilty of hiding sin. Amen. We are. But what has to be done is it has to be uncovered. And then once it's uncovered, God forgives. Now, God is going to punish Achan. But does God forgive Achan? I honestly believe he's going to forgive him. Because Joshua says if you make confession, all right, I believe that God is going to forgive him, but Achan is going to have to make an example of. And this is what is sad about this story. When you get into chapter 8, and we'll get into it, when you get into chapter 8, the story flip-flops. And chapter 8 is really what's supposed to be in chapter 7. And then when you get to chapter 8, everything is great, but when you get to chapter 9, the children of Israel are right back where they was before. They're just like us as people. They're just like us as church. They're just like us as a nation. We walk with God for a little bit, and all of a sudden, we get into the world. God brings us out. He uncovers, and we ask for forgiveness. He forgives, and then we start walking with Him. And all of a sudden, we're right back into the world. It's basically, if you study the book of Judges, it's a revolving door. And that's what the nation of Israel is. Look in verses 23. And they took them out of the midst of the tent and brought them into Joshua. Everybody, 3 to 4 million people are standing here watching this. Achan's standing there. They go to his tent. They raise up the tent. There's all the stuff. They bring it. And they brought them into Joshua and to all the children of Israel and laid them before the Lord. And Joshua and all of Israel with him. This is sad. Took Achan, his son, the silver, the garments, the gold, his sons, every single thing. Everything that Achan had laid his hands on. All of his kids, all of his family, everybody is taken to a valley called Achor. And what is interesting about Achan, have I told you this, what his name means? Achan's name means one who causes trouble. And we've talked about this a little bit. When Hebrews would have children, they would not necessarily name them right off the bat. They would watch them for several days, several weeks, sometimes months, and to kind of gauge their personality and figure out what kind of person they're going to be, and whatever their personality was or however they acted, they would name them a name which kind of reflected what that person was. Apparently, Achan was one of these kids that his mom and dad knew that he was going to have kind of a rough life. He was going to be a lot of trouble. And Joshua said, now look at this. Why hast thou troubled us? The Lord shall trouble thee this day. This is why when people start studying Deuteronomy and Exodus and Leviticus and Numbers, they really think that the law, when you start studying Old Testament law, it's boring. It's actually not. If you start studying the Old Testament law, the 613 Old Testament laws, you will find out that the law is not boring. The law is absolutely 100%, 1,000% perfect. There's nothing wrong with the law. And I've said this behind the pulpit. You know what's wrong? It's the person trying to keep the law. That's what's wrong. Nobody has ever kept this law, not one iota. Had Achan killed anybody? No. What had Achan done? And he admitted it. I coveted. Stole something. I coveted. You got 10 commandments. He broke 2 of them. What would we like to happen before you read verses 25? What if, let's just say we're Achan. We've been found out. We've been caught. What would we like to happen in verses 25? We would like for Joshua to say, I forgive you. God to say, I forgive you. All is wonderful. All is fine. But what you're dealing with law. Okay? And this is why I don't understand when you get to the New Testament, the Pharisees and the Sadducees and all them, they tried to follow this day in and day out. And I cannot understand for the life of me why they did not embrace God's grace and want to embrace God's law all the time. And Joshua said, you've troubled us. The Lord is going to trouble you this day. All of Israel stoned him with stones, burned them with fire, after they had stoned them with stones. That's not it. Verses 26, they raised over him a great heap of stones unto this day. So the Lord turned his fierceness of his anger. Wherefore the name of the place, the valley of Achor, and that is what it means. It means the anger of the Lord, is called unto this day. You know, that's, in actuality, your pastor, you guys, everyone, we could be put in verses 25. Did you know that? Everybody. Does God have to forgive us? No. Did God have to send Jesus Christ to die on the cross? No. But what did God do? God, being a gracious God, sent Jesus Christ to die on the cross that we could be saved. And you look in verses 8, and this is what you got to understand about God. God is and when we look at this, especially in the book of Joshua, he is a God of hurry up, hurry up, hurry up, hurry up. Let's get it done, let's get it done, let's get it done. With this, you really don't see any downtime. You remember there is a story, and I believe the high priest is Aaron, and I believe his 2 sons are killed. And because they brought strange fire into the tabernacle, and God kills them, and God basically tells their dad, I'll give you just a few minutes to mourn, and then we got to go we got to keep going. Got to keep going. In chapter 8, you have that awful tragedy that happens with him. You have that awful tragedy of him being stoned and then burned and then stoned some more. So not only is he is dead twice made over. And then you get to chapter 8, and it says, and the Lord said unto Joshua, fear not. Okay? Let's go back to Joshua chapter 1. If you go back to Joshua chapter 1, I'll do it, you don't have to. Verses 6, be strong and be of good courage. Verses 7, be strong and be of good courage. Verses 9, be strong and be of good courage. So he tells them 3 times, be strong and be of good courage. They've just witnessed, Joshua's just witnessed, and he has taken part in the stoning, burning, and stoning of an individual. And the first things out of the mouth of God is, don't worry about it. Fear not. You know, when we come before God, we come to him, and we should worship him in spirit and in truth. Should we fear God? Yes. Does it mean to be afraid of him? No. But we should fear him, his retribution upon us if we get involved into something we should not be involved in. Because it tells us the beginning of wisdom is what? The beginning of knowledge is what? Fear of God. If you were Joshua in chapter 8, verse 1, and you have just seen this, fire still burning, rocks are still smoldering, God comes up and he says, fear not, neither be dismayed. how would you react? Would you still fear God, or would you be like, okay, I'm really going to follow you? That is why being a Christian and following God when sanctification, I talk about it, is an everyday process. God constantly reminding us. I've got kids. I'm not going to point him out. He's a great kid. He does everything I say. I never have to remind him of anything. But for those of you that's got kids, when you tell them to do something, do they do it instantly? Well, you was quick on that, wasn't you? Wow, okay, we'll have a little talk with Gary when he gets back. But you have to constantly remind them. We were the same way. Our parents were the same way. And it's just human nature. We have to be constantly reminded. With God, what is he doing with Joshua? It seems like every chapter, be of good courage. Don't be afraid. Be of good courage. What is God reminding Joshua? Encouragement, 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 encouragement. Take all the people of war with thee, all of them, not the 3,000, not 6,000, not 100. You take every man. Arise and go up to Ai. See, I have given into thy hand the king of Ai. If you go back in chapter 7, you don't see those words. If you look about Jericho, God tells them the same thing in Jericho. But if you go to chapter 7, verse 7, Joshua said, Alas, O Lord, why hast thou brought these people over Jordan to deliver us into the hand of the Amorites? It's because somebody had sinned. They had not prayed. They had not sanctified themselves. But now you get up to chapter 8, and God says, I have given you the land, and I'm going to give you the king of Ai, his people, and his city, and his land. More than likely, what is happening in the city of Ai, or that little country of Ai, they're having a gigantic celebration, Super Bowl-type parade. We defeated the nation of Israel. We defeated them. They came in. We took care of them. We killed 36 of them. We're great. We're number one. Look in verses 2. And thou shalt do to Ai and her king as thou didst unto Jericho and her king. Here is the instructions to this. Only the spoil thereof and the cattle thereof shall you take for your prey unto yourselves. Lay thee an ambush for the city behind it. So what are they going to take? Cattle and some other stuff, and that's it. They go in and kill everybody else. Here's what happens. Joshua arose, all the people of war, to go up against Ai. Joshua is going to choose out 30,000 mighty men of valor and sent them away by the night. If you go back to chapter 7, verses 5, go back to chapter 7, verses 3. This is what Joshua says. Let not all the people go, but let 2,000 or 3,000 men go up to Ai, and make not all the people to labor thereof, because they're just a few people. That's human thinking. That's their human standpoint. That's what they think they need to do. You go over to Joshua chapter 8, what Joshua says and what God says about this battle is totally different. It's kind of like when you study, and I'll say this again, the book of Job. When you start studying the book of Job, you got Job and his 3 friends. Later, a 4th friend comes along. You got his 4 friends and Job discussing what type of God God is. Well, he's this type of God. I disagree. He's this type of God. Well, I think he's like this. I think he's like that. And all of a sudden, God comes up and says, all of you guys are wrong. Because they're thinking with their human mind. And they're not looking at God the way he should be looked at, or worshiping God the way he should be worshipped. So we're looking at this in chapter 8. Totally opposite. Instead of sending 2,000 or 3,000, this is what he says. I want you to take, he says, I'm going to get out 30,000 mighty men of valor. Not the 2,000 to 3,000. We are going to do this. We're going to go all out. In chapter 7, you can say that Joshua's putting about 30% into this battle. Probably less than that. If you look in chapter 8, what is Joshua putting into it? 1,000%. He's going all out as a life of a Christian. All right? Do we as followers of Christ give God, and I'm talking to myself right now, do we give God 100% each and every day of our lives? No. Here's the next question. Why don't we? Do you know what God gives us every single day? 100%. Did he give half of Christ on the cross? When Jesus Christ goes and dies on the cross, does God say, just die just for a select few, don't die for all of them, Jesus. I mean, just shed a little bit of blood, but not that much. I mean, we're going to put some sin on you, but not that many. God gave everything. The Apostle Paul calls the sacrifice of Jesus Christ on the cross an unspeakable gift. Because it is so wonderful, it is so amazing, it is so awesome that there are no words in the language of the Apostle Paul to describe the cross and describe forgiveness of sins, because he says it's absolutely unspeakable, this gift that Jesus Christ has given us. All right? And it says, go to verses 4. And he commanded them, and saying, this is verse 4, chapter 8, behold, ye shall lie in wait against the city, even behind the city. Go not very far from the city, but you better be ready. And I and all the people, verse 5, that are with me, will approach into the city, and it shall come to pass when they come out against us, as they do the first time, that we will flee before them. What has happened, he's taken these 30,000 individuals, and he's hid them behind the city. He's taken the rest of the children of Israel, they're going to go in front of the city. And what's going to happen is when Ai sees these people coming to the gate of the city, all the soldiers of Ai are going to chase the children of Israel away. And what is going to happen is those 30,000 people that are hiding behind the city, they're going to come in and absolutely destroy everything in Ai. And when those other soldiers come back, they're going to destroy them. That's a pretty good game plan, right? If you look at chapter 7, what was Joshua's game plan? Give me 2,000 or 3,000, we'll go in there and we'll be back in probably 15 minutes. Don't even turn the car off, leave it running. That was his game, that was his plan. You get to God's plan, it is meticulous, it is planned out, it is instructions. Because God is not the author of what? Confusion. It is step 1, step 2, step 3. In actuality, that is what sanctification really is. It's a process that we go through. I think that we and I'll just use Baptist because I'm a Baptist. I think something that we fail to do a lot of times, and I'm guilty as anybody, is that when you have a new Christian to come before Christ and they are saved, let's just say there's a young child, I know Bobbies have been saved, and those kids are fortunate enough to have grandparents and mom and dad to disciple them at home and to guide them at home, and they're very fortunate at that. But let's just say we have an adult that is green, knows nothing about God, knows nothing about salvation. God saves them. What do we usually do as a church once they come to the altar, they pray, they stand here, and they say, I'm saved, all right. Go back to the back, stand with me, give them the right hand of church fellowship. What usually happens after that? Forget about them. We think that God takes everything that's in this Bible and pours it into their head at night, and they're going to be great. We have lost what is called discipleship. Do you know what God is doing with Joshua? He is discipling him. In chapter 8, he's discipling him. In chapter 6, he's discipling him. All the time, that Joshua listens to God and Joshua allows God to disciple him, guess what? Great things happen. That's why I'm such an advocate of Sunday school. Sunday school class, we used to call Sunday night Sunday school discipleship training. In actuality, it's also Sunday morning. Sunday school is a discipleship training for Christians. That's why I love Sunday school so much. Because whatever you're taught back there, whatever you're taught in Sunday school, in actuality, it has really nothing to do with what I'm teaching you on Sunday. That's a separate teaching, okay? So that's why I'm such an advocate on Sunday school, because you are taught and you are discipled and you are given instructions. I've got to quit. Let's start with verses 10. And Joshua rose up early in the morning, numbered the people, went up, he and the elders of Israel before the people of Ai. And what is going to happen starting in verses 11, running all the way through verses 22, is what I explained to you. 30,000 is hiding. The people of Israel come up to the gate of the city. They chase them out. They come in and wipe them out. And when you get to verses 22, this is what happens. Or verses 23. And the king of Ai they took alive and brought him to Joshua. So the only person alive is the king of Ai. And it came to pass, this is verses 24, Israel had made an end of the slayings, not the killings. If you look in the Hebrew, killing and slaying is totally different. Killing is taking one's life. Slaying in Hebrew means to scatter. So it's a bloodbath. And that's why I think that Israel, because God has already foreordained it, but also the nation of Israel knows how to fight. Their army knows what they're doing. And I'm interested and I'm curious about what's going to be happening Saturday at 12 o'clock. If you don't know, look at the news. And it says, and it came to pass when Israel made an end to all the slayings of the inhabitants of Ai and in the field and in the wilderness, and they chased them. And when they had fallen, this is verses 24, on the edge of the sword, until they were consumed, all the Israelites returned to Ai and then smote the ones that was in Ai with the edge of the sword. Do you know what Israel is doing? They're doing what God has told them to do. Get rid of them. Get rid of everything. And so it was that on that day, both men and women were 12,000, even all the men of Ai are gone. You go back to chapter 7, how many died? None. You go to chapter 8, when they're following the will of God, how many die? All of them. We'll finish this up next week. I want to thank, we got some Sneed boys here tonight. I want to thank them for coming. And so make sure to make them feel welcome. Please make them feel welcome. Is there anything else? We got some business meeting to take care of. We're going to dismiss. If for those who don't want to hang around, you can go. Then we'll start the business meeting probably about 5 minutes. Is there anything else before we dismiss? And we'll finish this next week. Anything else? All right, Randy, would you dismiss us?